Yay, I did it! Okay, I turned it on. Um, you don't get Wade's fancy intro today because I'm not Wade and he can just deal with that. But we are here with episode 82, I think, of the Self-Publishing Roundtable, and we are here with Darren Wearmouth, and he is going to chat with us just for a little bit about the writing journey and all of the non-businessy sides of writing. So, do you want to tell us what you're working on, or um, just say hello?
Right.
Yes, we are done here. All right. Um, like I said earlier, I have all kinds of questions, but really, if you want to just continue on what you were saying about when you started, there were a couple of things you didn't quite get right, because that's going to help a lot of people, including me, because I'm going to write book 4 in my series this weekend in 2 days. So I'll just take everything you say and put it into that.
Yeah. Well, it's not exactly gospel, but I can only tell you from my point of view some of the things in my process work that I've gone through in writing and things that I needed to improve on that I didn't necessarily know at the start.
Mm-hmm.
My first book did quite well, but I've rewritten it recently for 47 North and upgraded it with a lot of the things that I picked up along the line. And there's a few kind of key things that I had to work on that I didn't do well enough when I first started out, and there were possibly things that I vaguely knew about or thought put them in, but I didn't execute them properly.
And how did you know that you didn't do them well? Like, if the book did well at first, didn't you just go, yay, I did it right? How did you
It,
know that they weren't right?
it can sometimes come across in the reviews,
Oh, okay.
and also when I started to work with structural editors, that they would say you aren't doing these things properly, or you need to change this, or there's not enough information here, you've rushed that part.
Mm-hmm.
And it also comes from reading some good books, craft books. And it also helps working with other writers, like exchanging manuscripts and going through them.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, if I kind of take it from the top, I think the first thing that I didn't do properly or well enough was filtering through the character's point of view. Now,
Yes.
if that's close third person or first person narrative, or whatever you choose to do, um, I think the easiest way that I manage it now is if I just imagine a camera on their shoulder and filtering all of the scene and the events through that. Whereas before I'd describe something and then have the person separate with the thoughts.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Through their own eyes. And once I started seeing the whole scene through the point of view character's eyes and filtering it correctly, then it made it far easier for me to develop them, because then you could add some thoughts that relate to what they're seeing.
Mm-hmm. And wherever they turn, they can see, but they can't see. I think you mentioned that to me before. They can't see what they can't see. I
Yeah,
think it was you that I'd heard that.
yeah, and they can't just jump from one room to another without scene break.
Right, right.
Yeah, and the way, yeah, I started on that when the serious work on the filtering when I started working with an editor with 47 North. That was quite a while ago, but it kind of made a lot of things click into place. Whereas an example I've used in Critical Dawn, when I was wondering how to build Gregor up, I mean, we had a profile of him before, because plan a certain amount of chapters out up front, and also the character's profile. So how to develop him, once I started filtering, makes it a lot easier. There's one example where he's walking behind one of his gang, and he does that on purpose because he'd seen him in a shootout in the barn earlier, and he knew the guy needed a second to do something quite bad.
Mm-hmm.
And once I started adding in that information, instead of like he didn't trust him, actually provide a scenario, then not only does it develop ego, it also develops Gregor, because you know what he's thinking about.
Yeah. I am admittedly not good at that yet. But after you mentioned that they can't jump from room to room. I was like, oh yeah. And I think I went back and fixed that in my first book because I was having her take in some things she couldn't possibly take in, and it didn't make any sense. And then going forward, I wrote the second book even better. But I get hung up with like how many people, how to switch back and forth. So if she's thinking something, how to filter it through the other character's eyes. That's what I'm trying to work on.
Yeah, well, I just don't if it's not in their point of view, unless you give them a scene break and then you put it from their point of view. So,
Okay.
yeah, I always have a chat. A scene for me personally, and this is personal taste, but I think most people do it. Is a scene unless you're kind of omniscient. If it's close to a person,
Hmm.
should always be the single point of view. And even I make the occasional slip, and Aaron tells me off because you're just putting something really, really simple, but it might sound like it's from the other person's point of view, like
Right. Right.
in such a way or something that you probably wouldn't notice if you were just looking.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, that comes back to the filtering, and the filtering helps the development, and and then on top of that, it's the sensory information as well.
Yes.
Now,
I like the way you do the sensory information. So go ahead. Sorry, I'm just getting excited. You do it
no,
very
not
well.
at all. Yeah, so it was more of a like a newspaper report. Some of my earlier chapters when I first started, and I think to help immerse a reader in a story and create more of a vivid scene, sensory information really helps. And again, I got that help working with the editors and reading craft books like Sam Delaney about writing, which is
What was
pretty
the
good.
name of that book?
Samuel Delaney about on writing or about writing. It's one of the two. And
I think I have that one. I think Carl sent it to me. I should probably read it
yeah,
before this weekend.
he kind of we can get onto what like how he how he goes about building the scenes and the description after. But as far as the sensory information goes, say I'm just trying to give you working examples. When in the first draft of that first book, I had a guy who I described with a bald head and white moustache just sitting down next to the protagonist on the plane, and then we just
Hmm.
started talking. It's quite a basic thing. You can think, oh, all right, yeah, okay. But then when I started to look into this and try and develop the scene to make it more immersive, I thought, what would I actually notice if this guy who I created as another character came and sat next to me and I was on a 747 in the sea? And I probably noticed his body shape for a start is
Hmm.
quite cramped, and I'd also noticed if he smelled of anything.
Right, that's what I was just thinking.
So it's just really easy to build that out into being a little more colourful by having like a pink polo shirt stretched around his bulky torso,
Hmm.
and the whiff of Old Spice when he flopped down in the seat next to him.
Yeah, I don't do that as well because I thought that by keeping the characters plain, that I could, like the reader will just decide what they look like based on the fact that I said she had brown hair, and that's not really the way to do it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's loads of different styles. I mean, this is just with my writing what I've come to the conclusion what makes it stronger.
Hmm. I
Uh,
enjoy reading it where there's more description. I just didn't know how to write it.
yes, yeah, not over the top description. I think. And one of the things Delaney talks about is just freezing the scene and picking out two key things to paint the
Hmm.
best. Now, um, it's always going to be different. You or I would notice something different if we walked into a room. I might have a look at the floorboards or the structure
Hmm.
uh, because I'm quite technically minded, or like the brass, I don't know, windowsills or something. Whereas I don't know, you may look at the duvet cover or the
I
drapes.
would probably look and see how many nice people were in the room, or like, was there any food there? I wouldn't notice any all that other stuff.
yeah. So I mean that's sort of thinking about your character as well and filtering a game. But then you can just describe it quite basically, couldn't you? Like the floorboard squeaked
Hmm.
um, when it walks over. So it's floorboards then. It's also like it's starting to mold in them with the character's actions. Um, or if there's a window open, you know, like the curtains, neck curtains, sheer curtains, whatever you want to say, can blow in them, which might, if it's winter, give you an idea of the atmosphere in the room.
Hmm. I always
And
forget there's windows. I have to go back in and add that stuff later.
yeah, so I mean, if you can sort of mold those two things in with the character's experience, and I mean, they could actually shiver, couldn't they, if it is cold in there and the windows are open.
Yeah, with the first one, I spent so much time writing the scene where the mom goes into the lady's house and she's super like organized and her house is perfectly clean. And I went like just pages and pages describing this girl's house, and but then nothing else in the book was described that well. And so when I was getting it back from the people that were reading it first, they were like, "Who cares? Like describe everything a little bit, and like we don't need to know what color all of the things in her house are." So
Yeah,
I had to
exactly.
figure out how to balance it.
Yeah, totally. It's just the most noticeable features.
Hmm.
If I look around my house, this room now, I noticed the iron fireplace and the bookcase. I mean, they were the two things that I noticed. There's table and chairs there,
Hmm.
um, and that's how I do it. But you're right that it should only really be described in any detail if it's important. And
Right. And it wasn't.
yeah, yeah. So then comes the problem of, well, how do you weave it all together when you're trying to put the character's thoughts across just through the point of view. You want to be able to describe the scene quite well enough, and you also want to input some sensory information. And the issue I had was a lot of books I'd read were quite old-fashioned. My two favourite PA books, both written in the late 50s.
Hmm.
Some of my favourite sci-fi thrillers were the early Michael Crichton ones.
Right. Do those?
And
Go ahead. Finish your thought, and then I'll ask.
they're not really conducive to a modern fiction writing style.
Right.
Uh, they have a lot more info dumps in them, where you would meet the character, then you go into 4 long paragraphs about the history, and just throwing it all out at once. She was 54 years old, had long brown hair, worked in blah blah for so long, married.
Right.
It's, yeah, she'd worked at 20. Yeah, and I don't think you can really get away with those kind of info dumps nowadays.
Hmm. Do people just don't like them as much now, or is that just a taste change?
It stops the story, I think, advancing. It's a little bit like flashbacks.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. That's true.
yeah, so it's quite odd if a woman walks into the room and then you have the point of view character just thinking about history. You just,
Right.
yeah. So I don't think it fits. So I try to. There's some good books, modern books that you can read um, in the style. James Rollins does it quite well.
Hmm.
The 60 Ball series. But it's just combining all of those elements and putting them into um, paragraphs. But then again, this doesn't apply for everyone because I know fantasy is written a lot different to science fiction, and thrillers is slightly different to science fiction, but more on the same lines. And it depends on your style. I mean, because I like science fiction, I like thrillers. I'm fairly aware of what style it should be.
Hmm.
And if I wanted to read a good book just to see how a pro does it, I wouldn't read a book from 1952 or 1978. I'd read one from 2014.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah. Um,
The dialogue, do you tell a lot through dialogue, or do you just use it as like an addition to the story? Do you do most of it through their eyes, or do you?
no, I don't do a lot of telling through dialogue because it sort of comes across as the well as you know type stuff, doesn't it?
Oh, right.
Yeah. As you know, this thing's been here since 1952.
Hmm. I hate when they do that in movies, so that's.
You just sound like a football commentator just blurting out an irrelevant facts during like an action sequence.
I've been watching the X-Files like all the way through. I'm almost done with it, and they keep going, as you know, such and such, and I'm like, what? You wouldn't say that if they were really there. That's just for our benefit.
Yeah, I think
But
there's
I'm
always
still watching it.
an easy way how to show things. So, I mean, the quick tell is okay if you want to move the story on, but yeah, and it's actually knowing when you. Sometimes I didn't know when I was telling when I should be showing.
That's a
Uh,
hard thing to figure out.
yeah,
That
it,
everybody says show and don't tell. I'm like, okay, can you point out where I'm doing it?
yeah, yeah. Some good books and stuff like that. Browning King, self-editing for fiction writers, is quite a good one.
Oh, that I'll have to get that one.
Yeah, it's good. The show and tell. It's got a chapter dedicated to it, and it gives you working examples as well. I mean, it does it on some slightly older books, but it's still really good. And
I'll link it in the show thing when we're done, because I'll pick that up.
yeah, it's worth reading. I read it. I think I read it twice.
Well, there you go. That's saying something.
Yeah, but something else that I uh, put into my first draft as well that I quickly learned, and I think once you know it and you read other books with it, mm. It kind of it feels strange, and that's passive voice, especially during action scenes.
When you read other books, is that what you said?
Yeah, because I used to do it with my first book, and I wasn't really aware that I was using it during action scenes,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but I was, and yeah, as soon as I started to find more active ways of saying everything, the book came to life a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I can give you another example here. I had like I had an alien grabbing someone and said he was thrown off the platform. Now that's not right. I mean, it's like it happened in the past. So it's much easier to say the alien grabbed him by the back of his jacket and threw him off the side of the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just more of an active way of saying things. And I
Yeah.
think that can come across in reader experience. A reader may or may not be aware of passive voice. I imagine that a lot are.
I have
But the ones that aren't will feel, they may not be able to put the finger on it, but they'll feel like they've had a less satisfying experience, I think.
right, yeah. I know that when I read your books and Nick's books, I'm like, there's that little something extra. And I think that's what it is. Or that's a part of it. I mean, your books are better. But, you know, like it's that little something extra that makes me feel like, oh, I just saw that. Like I can see it.
Yeah, there's a list of words that I always do a manuscript search on. I'm thinking of some like started is one of them.
Uh-oh.
Um, yeah, begun, and then almost.
Oh
Because
no.
yeah, well, it's describing something that hasn't happened, isn't it?
Mhm.
Like
It
it
is,
almost.
yes.
Well, actually, he didn't fall over, or he
Right,
stopped
right.
himself. And he started walking to the next room. No, he just walked to the next room, didn't he?
Yeah.
So,
Dang
yeah.
it. There's something else to remember.
Um,
That's I didn't even think of it.
yeah, had been. Have a search for that.
I do
Was,
that all the time.
yeah, was is the biggest. I mean, it's fine if you talk about something in the past, like uh, when you're in the thoughts, like Stu's just say, like it's easier to do it in the thoughts, but when it's actually in action, that's when I cut all of that out.
Hmm. Do you
Um,
write like that? Like, do you self-edit as you're writing now, or do you find that you do it a lot and then have to remove it? I
no,
was just curious.
I self-edit when I'm writing, and once I got into the routine of trying to do this and expressing all of these elements while I'm writing, it quickly becomes a habit, and you just end up not doing it anymore. It's kind of like starting an exercise routine, I
Hmm.
suppose.
Hmm.
It's always hardest getting into it those first few weeks.
Then once you figure out you can actually do it, you just keep doing it.
Yeah, at least in my case, I had to concentrate on not using passive voice, adding in the right kind of information and description
Hmm.
and character at the same time. Because if we don't put them in, then we don't even know what they're thinking, do we? It's just yeah. I mean, I did put them in, but I didn't do it enough. So the character can come across as a little bit thin,
Right,
and the
right.
but, um, so I've altered that. Um, and once I've just got myself into these good habits and practiced them,
Hmm.
I managed to, I think I managed to create a more active and more descriptive book. And
Does it make it more fun to write it? Like, do you enjoy it more now than when you started, or does it feel
yeah,
the same?
because I was worried that people would pan me and say, "Oh, I didn't like that," or it's written by an amateur or something like that. But I'm kind of less worried about that nowadays because I can pick up a trad book and you can read it and you can see certain problems in it. I think, oh, I don't make those mistakes.
Hmm.
But by no means do I think I'm a Isaac Asimov or or anything. I mean, to claim to be in that kind of league is ludicrous. But at least I'm fairly confident that people may not like the story, but they won't be able to criticise the writing.
Right, right. I did have one reviewer say I didn't like the story, but the writing was really good. Like you didn't make any mistakes, and I was like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, it's fine if somebody doesn't like your story. We've all got different tastes.
Hmm.
Um, I think for me, making myself a little bit more bulletproof in the craft area has helped quite a lot.
I think that's almost impossible to do when you're starting out, though. Like, I don't know. It feels like putting it all out there, and now I'm worried more about um, getting into the routine, like the routine of outlining and the routine. So now I'm all just like, I don't care. I'm just gonna keep writing, and it'll fix itself later. But it's more fun now for me too.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure everybody's got a different process. For me, I like to outline ahead, not completely to the end. I know where the story's going to end, and I know the turning point, and I know where it's going to start.
Hmm.
And there's certain things I've been learning to put in there as well. Like it's very good, for instance, in the genre that I write in, to have a ticking clock, because otherwise, yeah, it gives the character something to work towards, and they've only got a limited amount of time to do it, which helps. Um, because otherwise, if they've got an unknown amount of time, I think
Right.
puts it ramps down the attention a couple of notches.
I think I do that like all of my books take place over like 2 days or a week, and
Mm.
only because I can't write. And then 4 months later, this happened. So I just go, everything's urgent. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And if you got yeah, I think a deadline helps because especially if there's real big consequences to it.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah,
just go
um,
ahead. Sorry.
and before that, and again, you can read this in some deep books, but it's something that I talked to one of the editors about is just having a few reversals and some good conflicts because otherwise, if the character goes through and completes everything, he just comes across as superhuman, or it makes his task seem quite easy.
Yes, I
Um,
just read that.
yeah, it's the try fail seesaw,
Yes.
or succeed fail, however you want to see it. It's common in films, isn't it? I think
Yes,
Black,
I've noticed it more since I've heard that, and I was like, oh look, they're doing it too.
yeah, Blacklist uses every one of these formulas in the book to do it, and yeah, and that's another thing. I don't really try to be formulaic. I don't think there's any plan you can get out there to do it. I'd still like to use my imagination and come up with plots, and I don't think, oh, I must have this in or I must have that in.
Hmm.
But I think just becoming more aware of these elements helps a lot. Uh, and and these books do go into some detail about it. But I also get it from reading and watching TV. I mean, reading's quite key for me as well because it tells me where I am. I mean, I do like to self-analyze and have a look at my writing and compare it to what other people are doing. No, I don't pick up another indie book and put them side by side.
That
You
was
know,
going to be my next question. Hmm.
no, I read for enjoyment, but I do have half an eye on the style and what they're actually doing.
Hmm. I like to watch movies because however I take it in, um, like I enjoy watching movies more than I like reading, which is probably not good, but because then I'll go, oh, and then I'll try to put it into words.
Yeah, I mean, I get different experiences from a film to a book. I do like sitting down watching films. Don't get me wrong. It was a copy of one of Highland's short stories. I can't remember the name of it, but it was good.
Hmm.
Um, but I get totally different experience out of reading the book. I think I just think that I get a lot more out of it
I've
because
been
it's more detailed.
reading. Say that again.
I just feel closer to the characters, more details to the story. I particularly like I like close third and first person because you can almost live vicariously through their actions
Hmm.
and paint your own pictures of what's happening.
The
And
only third person I liked, I think, was Harry Potter, and I loved it, even though I don't normally like Harry said this and Harry said that, but the rest of the book made up for it.
yeah, my brother gave me Harry Potter. He said you should try reading this, and I've got to be honest, I dumped it after two chapters. Like,
Oh,
Wizards isn't my thing.
it's not my thing either. I was just like, why do I even like this? And it was slow getting into it, and then all of a sudden I was just like, I suddenly care about everything. So I liked it. I would say just keep powering through it, but if you don't like it, you don't like it.
Yeah, the no, and
So you won't be writing any wizard stories anytime soon. Got it.
no, I wouldn't. Just kind of going back to the writing thing, the conventional wisdom on certain message boards, and I often hear it bandied about, and I see it on authors' blogs, is just keep writing. And I think to myself, if I'd have just kept writing and not done all of these other measures to try and improve myself, I would have still been at the same standard. And I think I would have started to see diminishing sales because
Really?
it would have been, I think it would have been, I think not only would have been cheating myself, I'd have been cheating the reader as well.
I was gonna
Because,
say you'd be just doing a disservice to the reader.
yes, because I want to give them the best possible product that's in me at the time. And the only way I can keep doing that is to keep improving. And
It's like taking a training course or going to school. If you just expect it of yourself, then you're gonna get better.
yeah, so keep writing is a standalone statement. I don't believe it's true. I think it's the biggest lie of the indie world. But keep
In a lot of
writing.
places, so just keep going. It'll work
Yeah,
out.
yeah, just keep going. If you write a million words, you'll be good. I don't think so.
Right, right.
Um,
Not if they're
I would,
crap.
yeah, I could write a million words of crap in a week, and I probably would have if I'd have just started out of the gate and just continued along without working with good editors, reading these books, and also reading myself
Hmm.
and finding out some of these things. I actually love science fiction. I love telling stories, and it just I feel a lot more comfortable in the fact that I can convey the story properly. Because before I had the ideas in my head, but they weren't coming across on the page properly. They weren't descriptive enough. They weren't immersive enough. There wasn't enough information.
Hmm.
But now I think to some extent I can do that reasonably okay, and it just makes me a lot happier when I read my stuff back and think, yeah, okay, somebody might enjoy that, rather
Yeah.
than thinking somebody might hate that.
But hopefully they still paid for them. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Suckers. No. Um, that's good that you like it. That's good that you are moving forward. Um, in learning. I'm gonna pick two of the books you recommended and I'll read them before I go write book four this weekend. And hopefully that will help out, because with the third book, I don't know. I just need to make a step forward and write because I was gonna just write the fourth book because I needed to write a fourth book, and my friend Matt Morris was like, just get the fourth book out, just write it, just write it. And I kept trying to write it, and I was like, this is crap, I don't like it. And he said, just doesn't matter, just keep writing. So I got to go back and figure out how to do it properly, because I really want the fourth one to be better than the first three. I think that's the whole point. Otherwise, they're gonna poop out on me and not want to read the rest.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, I've made my own electronic notes on some of these things, and I beta read for an author about 2 months ago now, and it was a really good story. But my issue was because it was written as a thriller, the flashbacks kept just unnaturally stopping the story. I didn't really care that the person was in like a boss or anything. It didn't build character in relation to the story because it didn't relate to the content.
Right.
But secondly, we used tons of passive voice. So I sent him a sheet that I've got with all of the search words and some examples about how you can change it as well. And I think if you do something small like that, and anyone can email me for it, it kind of clicks, and you think, oh, right, yeah, I can see that now. I can see how it's more active, and I can see how that's probably slightly in the past.
Once you spend so much time in the story, though, it's hard to see it. But then again, if you send it to the wrong person, they're going to be like, maybe possibly not helpful. So you have to find somebody who's smart and that you trust.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I've always been cool about since I've been picking this up. I don't take anything personally from the editors. I read this on a message board the other day. Like, I'm not using an editor because he'll spoil my voice or she'll. And I just don't think that's true. It's kind of misunderstanding the role of an editor. And I've picked up so much from working with good ones like Darren.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've helped me improve and they show me some of these things. And
that's their job. Their job isn't to powder your butt; it's to make it better.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. And I just think it's people get a lot. Some people get a lot out of working with one, like I have, and that's because it's impossible to implement everything exactly in the way that you want to.
By yourself, right?
Yeah. Coming up with a full manuscript without the odd wonky phrase, or without a scene that doesn't quite make sense, description.
Yeah, a thought that you were going somewhere with it and then you didn't. So for somebody to look at it and go, "Were you going somewhere with that?" Because it doesn't need to be in here otherwise.
Yeah, or the odd skull jump, accidentally putting a sentence or two as if it's from another person's point of view.
Right.
That's why I like working with those people, because they can help me.
That's a different kind of brain they've got, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. Because it's objective, isn't it? They can pull themselves away from the detail because we're too fast to be able to do that, and then come in and do it.
And in our brain, we already saw everywhere the story was going to go, everywhere it maybe could go, and they're just like, it's special. My sister could probably do that, but my brain's like, woo, tell stories all the time. So I need somebody to dial in and fix the problems.
I had this example when I was speaking to a different guy, and I read his book, and I said I couldn't really see where I was there. It was a little bit confusing. And he said, "Oh, you don't understand it because of this, this, and this." And I said, it's fine to say that, but it's not. It's not. And if I don't understand it, and this is my genre, then you can guarantee a lot of it.
And how did he take that? All right then.
No, yeah. Well, he hasn't spoken to me since. So
oh no.
He might have fallen off the face of the planet, or.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah, well, it's not a personal thing, is it? I like people giving that feedback and criticism because it can correct it, and you get a neutral opinion. they're not being nasty for the sake of it, I don't believe. People aren't like that.
Right.
Uh, One good way, what you said before about, it's the whole big manuscript. This is what I'd started to do with Colin. When we write the chapters in individual Word documents. So an 80,000 might be 40 single Word documents of 2,000 to 2,500 words each, or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And yeah, it just makes it so much easier to tackle when you're going through second drafting or trying to look at a slice of the book to just
So
deal
is
with,
that scenes or is that's not chapters, is it?
yeah, chapters.
It's different chapters? And you're
Yeah.
okay with having like 44 chapters?
Well, it depends on the book. Sci-fi thrillers are often cut into chapters like that, 2,500 words. Some are longer, some are even shorter. Atlantis Being has chapters in that are about 200 words.
Wow. Mine are 2,000 words long, but my books are not 80,000 words long. Like I have 20 chapters, so I do the same thing with the individual Word documents. I just don't I write half that much.
Yeah, well, and you write half the chapters.
Right.
And I found it personally so much easier to tackle when coming to edit a manuscript. I was talking to my brother about it because he was saying it's a bit of a drag going through such a huge document. And I talked to him about splitting it up because for me it's just a manageable piece of work. Okay, I need to go and second draft this chapter in 2,500 words. It just looks so much smaller to do.
Yes,
And
and that way I can say I have this many hours, I'm going to edit one chapter, and it makes me feel like I've accomplished something.
yeah, and that's psychological, isn't it? But it works for
Hmm.
me.
Yeah. Otherwise, I would just say I just wouldn't know if I was getting anywhere. I
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to reward myself when I went, oh, I edited 3 chapters today. I
yeah,
get 6 donuts or whatever.
yep.
Yep, that's exactly right. All right, well, it is almost 10, whatever time it is there for you. Um, so will you email me those books that you were talking about, and I'll put them, you can do it later, and I'll put them in the comments um, on the show whenever it gets uploaded, because I don't do that part.
Okay, no problem.
The craft books that you were mentioning. And thank you again. I appreciate it.
No,
It was
thank you.
good
Nice
to have
chat.
you back on. Yes, and hopefully Xavier can figure out how to get this uploaded to the website.
I'm, I'm conscious that a lot of authors already know this, but this was just my own process when I come through it, and it's kind of things that I wish I'd have known up front or spent more time on doing, but I got there in the end, and
And
yeah,
you didn't just keep writing and barrel on through. You
no,
stopped to think about it.
yeah, you can still keep writing, but try to implement all these changes at the same time.
Right. It's hard. It's hard to know what to do next.
It is difficult because then you can freeze and stop thinking about it and not get the word count out. I was thinking, am I getting this right? Am I getting that right? So, to some extent, I just did carry on writing them, but then I could go back and look specifically at some problems.
Yeah. I know people who go the opposite and they just think about craft all the time and they read about craft and then they don't get the work done. So
Yeah,
a happy medium is a good place to be.
I think so. It's very hard to be specific, isn't it? Because literary fiction, which I'm not a huge fan of, um, is completely different to thriller fiction,
Hmm.
and it's impossible to um, give a generic story and relate it to both genres because
It
it's
is,
not.
and for your personal schedule, like what works for you won't work for me because I have like I was telling you earlier, I discovered today and yesterday trying to get on this call with you, I'm not a morning person. I can't figure out how to push computer buttons in the morning, um, and stuff like that. So yeah, there's no right way to do it.
No, not at all. And um, this is only the way that I've gone about it. And well, I'm sure it'll resonate with some people who've been along the same journey.
if we take a little bit of each, like Denise Grover Swank, and like I have you and Colin and Nick and Denise that I'm like a little bit from here, a little bit from here. This is how I'm gonna do it, and this is how I'm gonna figure it out. So yeah, I appreciate it. All right, I'm gonna sign off here, so you can go do your thing, and Xavier will stop messaging me. Um, Thank you very much. I appreciate it,
Yeah,
and have a
well,
good. Do
yeah.
what?
I said nice talking. I hope I wasn't too boring.
Yes, thank you, and hopefully I'll get that book 4 written this weekend, but we'll see. Fingers crossed. Thank you.